interesting image of being obscured, as we can't see through the mist. It's actually a misty night here in Melbourne, and I decided on my way back from a friend's place that I would do a video. I was actually really, really tired, but the inspiration was there. So I always put the inspiration first. And I felt inspired to wear this wig. I'm going to wear it when I go out, actually, because I think we need some cheering up in this place. We got some very serious leaders who haven't found this. Not yet. But maybe this journey they're on as well may well lead them. Because peace is ace. I like that. It's also face. It's like face, doesn't it? Or it could be P. Or ease, if that C was an S, ease. We need to deal with dis-ease. All disease is an outer manifestation of inner dis-ease. Everything that happens in our lives, believe it or not, starts from within and then it's manifested out. Perhaps these times are going to force us into new trajectories or new tracks that we hadn't considered before. Hardship, poverty, stress, powerlessness, fear. These things actually are teachers in disguise, and they do lead us to where we need to go. It can just feel overwhelming because we feel like we're losing our freedom. It appears that way. The truth is you can never lose your freedom. You are always free to choose, even if you're free to choose what the authority says or not. And even if or not means a fine comes, okay. But you have the freedom to choose. The moment you feel you're not free and you have no power to choose, that's when you lose your freedom. So no external party can ever take your freedom from you. You can only give your power away because of your fear. So this video is really to inspire perhaps a new way of seeing. From my perspective, I have no fear whatsoever of coronavirus. I never have had, not even really for a moment. The only time I had more concern about hygiene was when I was watching a lot of television, and I started to become a little bit paranoid about my hands, and I was, making sure that they didn't touch anything. But I stopped watching the television and the fear disappeared completely. So I have no fear. I have no fear of catching it. I have no fear if I do catch it. I just deal with it in that moment because everything happens for a purpose. There are no mistakes in the universe. People might say universe, well, it's a bit out there. Well, it is. Or it could be in there. Who's to say? But what it means is we are much more powerful than we know, but we believe we're not. We live in a world where we've been taught to do as others say. We've been taught to set our lives to the side and just do as you're told. We're taught after school, of course, we're taught not to think. At school, we're taught to think. But predominantly, we are pretty much following a collective process of thoughts coming through media, coming through authority figures. And we may at times not know what to believe because we're getting conflicting thoughts. But life is a smorgasbord, and everybody gets to choose from the smorgasbord how they choose to live. For me, I choose to be happy, and I am. I'm working very hard on resolving and solving the problem of the coronavirus. I don't need to do it scientifically. I'm looking into the dis-ease or the lack of peace, which has given impetus to what has been called COVID-19. And just so that people are a bit clearer about that, it's actually not a virus. COVID-19 is a description of the symptoms. It has been alleged, and this is not proven yet, that the coronavirus or COVID-19 symptoms of cough, sore throat, shortness of breath, and headache is the virus. Others have said that SARS-CoV-2 appears under the microscope to create the COVID-19. It shares something to the realm of 80% apparently of DNA, which is actually quite a big distance in respect of DNA. We share 96% of our DNA with chimpanzees. I was told tonight that we share, 90% with bananas. I thought that was funny. I really? I hadn't heard that before, and we're clearly not from the banana family, although we have been called a banana republic. So who knows? There could be some throwbacks. So there is contention around the virus itself. And of course, the moment I use the word virus, I see computer virus immediately. I see greed as a virus. Something that self-replicates and keeps self-replicating seems to be unable to stop its growth. So just be aware that there appears to be a situation happening. There is great fear around that situation, particularly from the government. I see the government more in fear than anyone else. I'm really surprised to see some of the reactions. Like here in Melbourne, some tower blocks. I was informed tonight that 11 tower blocks have been put into lockdown. And these are families in these places, and these kids need to get out and play. And immediately I cast my mind to Kashmir when I flew into Kashmir from India. As soon as I got to the airport, I was trying to work out how to get to my friend's place, who was a journalist. She'd been a Rotary Peace Fellow. We both had studied in Bangkok, Peace and Conflict Studies. And so I was flying in to see her. And this Srinagar is a Muslim city, although they typically share more with the Persians in respect of their culture, I noticed. They're not Arabic, they're Persian. So I flew in to Kashmir, Srinagar, the capital, and was trying to find a way to get to my friend's place. And eventually I found there was a little bit of a taxi service happening there. It's not like your traditional Western place. You've got to go looking for it. And I jumped in the car with the driver. He rang my friend to find out where she lived. No GPS. And we drove along and I saw barbed wire on either side of the road. I saw tanks, police cars, army vehicles. Actually, it was army, not police. It was army. So militarised zone is where I came into. Melbourne could wind up as a militarised zone. I think they're keen to bring the army out just to give them a bit of practice. I don't know. I think they had practice in Afghanistan. I don't think they need any more. But anyway, here I am in Kashmir in a car talking with a guy who's Kashmiri. Now, the reason this came up for me today was there were all these tower blocks in the middle of Srinagar. A lot of people, a lot of the population, very densely populated there. When I got to my friend's place, after we drove through the protests in the city, because this is a tense place between the Indian and Kashmiris. Kashmir is in the Himalayas. You can see the Himalayan mountains. It's the jewel of India. It's the most beautiful place, but it's occupied by, at that time when I was there, it was 800,000 soldiers, and there was only 800,000 people. So one soldier per person. Weren't they lucky they had their own soldier? So this is a militarized zone. This is a conflict between India and Pakistan in actual fact. It's one of the top flashpoints in the world for nuclear, because there's a 3-minute, I think, or 2-minute trajectory between New Delhi and Islamabad in Pakistan. So this country became the meat in the sandwich, became targeted because it was like a buffer between India and Pakistan, and both of them wanted Kashmir. India had princely states, and Kashmir was one of those princely states where the authority were Hindu. And of course, Jammu and Kashmir are two cities. Jammu is a Hindu part of Kashmir, if you like. Oh, yeah, and Srinagar is the sort of Muslim part. So we've got a religious difference. The capitals move each year from one city to the other. But nonetheless, this is under lockdown a lot of the time, but it's a violent lockdown. Now, when I was there, literally 5 minutes after I arrived at her place, lockdown happened, but they call it curfew, which means you cannot leave your house. And of course, this is a very poor country. People get very sick. It's very difficult to get to doctors. As we're finding here in Australia, to our amazement, they're not allowing other people to go into the hospital. So the hospital's empty. It's a very bizarre situation, which I would question. If we're talking about deaths at the end of the day, and that being the driving force of risk, we've got 104 deaths out of a population of 25 million since January. That's it. Even influenza is higher death rate. It's 1,500 to 3,000 a year. So that has to be questioned. I'm going to go still for a moment because of this situation, and also the inspiration I had today to do this video for you, because I want to bring inspiration to the people. So I just want to explain why I go still, so those who haven't seen me do this understand. What I'm doing is I'm going silent in my mind. I breathe in, and I find a very peaceful place that I go into that's very silent. The reason I do that is because great wisdom comes from silence. Anyone can do this. I don't have any special abilities that you don't have. I just do this. Because when we're in situations of fear, feeling trapped, believing we're not free, believing that we've lost our freedom and that these powers are starting to look dictatorial, just breathe. Breathe in and breathe out all that stress. Breathe in, know that you're free. Breathe out, know that there's no mistakes in life. Everything happens for a purpose. No mistakes at all. Everything's meant to be. Sometimes it can feel that it's all out of control, but it's not. There's an underlying peace beneath this drama, and that's where I'm guided to help you to see, so that you can cope with what can feel like a lot of stress and strain around you. This is also being sent to the people of Kashmir as well, who know lockdown very well. They've been locked down for 80 years. They, just to sort of very quickly say before I go still again, they were under lockdown for 50 days straight. Here we're having 6 weeks. That's 30. It's getting up there. But just know that you are free even in a prison. And I read a letter tonight from someone who's actually in a prison in France because he was on drugs and he tried to get money to get drugs. He got put into a maximum security jail, this guy. He'd committed no crime, really. He was just addicted to drugs. He went into solitary confinement for months for no crime. He wasn't causing trouble. But in this prison, he started to learn about what rights were, because he had a fairly entitled attitude before. He had certain racial beliefs, but the letter I read tonight was a man who's transforming through his own darkness, through his own solitary confinement. He said he's bringing the light to himself from within himself, and he felt peace, he said. He said that when he was a child, he would always try and put his hand under the hot water. And his mother would always try and stop him, because he's going to burn himself. You're going to hurt yourself if you do that. Now, he's a 31-year-old man. He's remembering as a child his insistence on burning himself because he wanted to feel the pain. This is the metaphor he's bringing up in the letter. But he's now starting to realise that it wasn't about the hot water. He's philosophically realising that, yes, he put his hand, because his mother let him the last time he burned his hand. She let him do it because he needed to experience the pain, to know not to do it. And as a 31-year-old man, he's sitting in a jail and he's remembering how he was insisting on burning his hand. And he realises throughout his life he's been burning his hand. But he's recognising that there's more to this than just burning your hand. And he's recognising his freedom from within. Even in a prison cell, he's free. There's no way he can get out of this. He has to serve his time. He has to wear the stigma of having been in jail. He would feel like a failure with his life. And yet, he consciously brought the light into a very dark room because he said there was no light coming into this cell they put him in. His jailers had no compassion for his well-being, and we could certainly draw parallels to those making decisions, certainly not having much in the way of empathy, but we saw that in the detention centres too, that the refugees were seen as less, and having no protections, they were given no rights. They were not looked after properly. So that suggests people detaching from their humanity and believing that that's appropriate conduct. So it was wonderful to read his letter. I was actually really inspired. I've met him. He's a friend of mine's son. He actually started his life earlier on as a Buddhist. His mother was a Buddhist and he lived in a Buddhist centre. And I've always had a feeling that he had to go through some very, very hard times in order to find the truth of who he is. And I believe that's precisely what's happening for him. So fear not. He had to go through what he had to go through, just as you do, just as I have. We've all been through hardship. But it can be the most amazing teacher if you go with it. Yes, you will cry. Yes, you will get angry. Yes, you will fight. But when it's all said and done, you will go still. And you will remember that light that's always inside you that no one can take. So that's my job tonight, is to share this with you. So we're going to go still together. I want you to breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out stress. Nothing to fear but fear itself. Fear is false evidence appearing real. Breathe in deeply. Breathe out life, joy, wonder, excitement. It's all inside. You can be anything. Even inside yourself, you can be anything. Your imagination can take you anywhere. You're never, ever imprisoned unless you fear. Fear is the jailer, not any person. I was homeless for 3 years and still am. I'm in emergency accommodation. I'm saying this for those who don't know. And I'm deeply happy. I have dedicated my life to peace, which I did way, way before becoming homeless. I dreamed I was teaching peace in 1998. And I rang a friend the next day who was a teacher and says, does anybody teach peace? You know, like War and Peace? You know, well, actually, it wasn't War and Peace. I asked him, do they teach peace as part of the curriculum? And he was a teacher and he said, no, they don't. What we do is War and Peace as part of curriculum, but there's no dedicated subject to peace. Years later, I actually wrote Real Hopes, which is a peace, non-violence and anti-bullying program, because there's a lot of bullying going around, I'm noticing at the moment. So Real Hopes is an acronym for responsibility. I have the ability to respond. I can do something. It's in my hands. Empathy. If, say, I'm in a tower block and there's 500 police outside, can I put myself in the shoes of the police who are clearly fearful? Can I put myself in the shoes of the Premier who's also fearful? Because fear doesn't need to. I'm going to go still on that because what am I saying here? Fear is false evidence appearing real. Love shares, cares, reveals, and heals. Okay, these are the... Fear tends to contract. It defends. It can attack. Fear criticizes and shuts down. This is a shutdown. It's fear-based. A love-based reality would deal with this type of problem in a different way. When you become fearless, you're not afraid of any virus. That doesn't mean that you don't wash your hands with soap. That doesn't mean if it's highly contagious and lethal that you wouldn't physically distance, but you will never socially distance in a love-based reality, because you know that the mental health issues are the big one. And in fact, here in Australia, the two areas of presentation to doctors is mental health being number one. Second one is respiratory. I found that very interesting when I did the research. And these are the two things that are being triggered in this dis-ease that we're experiencing, not only here in Australia, but globally. So this is a message for everybody. Breathing in. Breathing out. Breathing in, joy. See the joke? Breathing out, laughter. Oh, oh, ha, ha, ha. Yeah, I can do some laughter for you. Ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. Ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. Ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. Or you can do it this way at a restaurant. You might go, now she's crazy. No, I was a clown. I went with Patch Adams to Russia. One of the greatest experiences of my life was travelling with 40 clowns into Russia. We didn't rush though. Didn't go to Rushmore. That's in the US. But we learnt to laugh at life's troubles. I've also done laughter workshops with that good friend of mine who is an amazing facilitator with laughter, because laughter lifts the immune system in actual fact. So laugh. This can be funny. You can dress up. You know, you might have a restriction, but wear a colourful hat. I've got one up there. Laughter is the best medicine is what Patch Adams was teaching. And in fact, Patch, over in Virginia, where he lives in the United States, he has himself an eco-village and he's teaching compassion. So he's working on teaching really positive skills, empathy, standing in the shoes of that other that's frightened. What we think about, we bring about. So the more you focus on the fear, the more you rewire the brain to start to see through that filter of fear. There's also a very important thing you need to be aware of is the law of attraction. You can look it up on the net. Esther Hicks would be my recommendation, and you'll find Esther very interesting. She's a channel. Once you start to get into positivity, it literally takes you through other doorways. And those doorways open up a vista that you may never have considered. So when we start to recalibrate ourselves to a positive outlook, these things are temporary. The Buddhists say that too. They say that this too will pass. The Taoists say that as well. This too will pass. It's all temporary. What you're dealing with is a fear that rises and says, oh my God, I can't get out. Oh my God, I can't leave the city because Melbourne's locked down now. We can't even go. This has never been heard of. They've even closed the borders. You think there was a major war going on. I think they think there is one, but I think the war is with ourselves. I don't think there's anything you need to fight. Love is the answer is a very true statement because it shifts the energy. It lifts what we call frequency. Frequency is how you feel. Your immune system responds to your thoughts. Your emotions will rise on those thoughts of seeing in a different way. This is all an opportunity to learn to see in another way, to learn that you aren't restricted unless you believe you are, to learn that freedom is within, not without. So going back to Esther Hicks, the law of attraction is what you think about, you bring about. So you attract to yourself what you're constantly ruminating over. So if I'm a person, and many in, not just in government, but in any organisation really, when we're fixed on a problem and we come together and we're thinking of all the terrible things that can happen. Now, interestingly enough, Edward de Bono comes into my mind right now. I met Edward many years ago. He's a very nice guy. I wrote to him too a few times, and we met in Melbourne. I interviewed him for my radio program as well. Edward de Bono is one of the top 50 thinkers in the world, I believe. I always laugh at that because it's like, how did they figure that out? Did they go and check all, 6 billion people? Right, no, he is the top 50th. Yes, he's thinking, he's breathing. So I laugh. So let's just say from an academic point of view, he's very admired. He wrote the 6 thinking hats, which is you literally put on a different hat to parallel think. So I might put on the white hat to work out what the facts are. And if I'm in a group of people, we can say, okay, let's put the white hat on. What are the facts? What do we know about this? Let's put on the yellow hat. This is optimism. What do we know about that? Let's put on the black hat. That's criticism. Let's critically appraise this situation. So there's many hats, 6 thinking hats. And Edward, I read that book and I was very impressed. And in fact, I contacted Edward when I was in Brisbane. I was an economics student at the time. And his lecture at that time was $400 a head. I remember that. Now, that was a lot. That was back in the early 90s, I think. No, late 80s, early 90s. And I wrote to him and I said, gifted students may not have money. Can't quite remember exactly how. I actually wrote him a letter and I made 2 points. I was a bit cheeky. I want to make 2 points. And I was just saying that, there was exclusion happening through this pricing structure he had. So lateral thinking students can't afford $400, and, why should they be excluded? And I was sort of making a few points. about offering it for free. They should have scholarships. Why not? So to my surprise, Edward actually rang me back and we talked on the phone and he invited me to come for free to his lecture. And it was really funny. I always laugh the night before. I'm thinking, oh, I'll be up on the stage, you know. Yeah, right. So I sat in the audience with everyone else because the audience was huge. There was 1,000 people there. And there he was sitting down and he was teaching people lateral thinking, like poi, you know, coming at different angles. And I get a lot of inspiration. And you might note that when I'm speaking, I actually come from many angles when I'm being inspired. I was going to say tackling a problem, but I'm really not. It's more I'm allowing consciousness to find its levee, to sparkle in its own way. I'm not controlling the flow here. So I'm allowing my feeling and my thought to dance together. This is integration. Whereas many people who would be presenting an oratory presentation would have written down notes. I never write notes because I allow myself to come from a sense of authenticity. So going back to Edward, he came in because we got to learn to think differently. And I visited Edward many years later in London. He lived in Piccadilly Circus. And I remember he and I were sitting there with vodka, knocking back a glass. And we had a good old brainstorm together, actually, because I was trying to find some work. And I'd written to Austrade, I think at that time, Jonathan Coleman, who used to be the DJ on Triple M in Sydney, where I used to live. I wrote to him. And I actually sent him a Kit Kat. And I said, can you give me a break? Because that was, you know, in the advertising. You know, have a break, have a Kit Kat. And I knew he'd know that. But unfortunately, he didn't have any work for me. But Edward and I sat there and brainstormed about possibilities. I said, I thought that. I've already thought about that. I've considered that. And I laughed and I thought, oh, I'm as smart as him. Probably not, but let's just say I enjoyed that thought. Edward had books. It was ground to ceiling books. This guy absorbed all these books. He was a learned person. And there was no fancy anything. This guy was very wealthy. No fancy anything. He was humble. And I really liked him. I liked him as a friend. And I just thought, that's greatness, is when you don't even have to have all these things to prove to people how great you are. He already was great. He was great because he was going into serving humanity. And he was doing it through lateral thinking because he was the one that coined that term. So if you've heard lateral thinking, Edward de Bono was the one who coined it. Creative thinking. So it's learning really to think in different ways because often what we do is we go, oh, I have to go to work. What happens if there's a disruption? So maybe disruption is a good thing. So, you know, I can entertain these things, you know, even though I can go, well, I can look at it from many angles. I have that capacity. So let's say disruption is a great thing. And I know Josh Frydenberg would be with me on this. Maybe it's a great thing. It's like poi. And what that means in Edward's thinking program, he had PO, which is poi. And what it means is you're thinking out on a trajectory. You're not going down this linear, logical, but you're actually coming in at right angles to a thought. So that thought would be, oh, wow, great, lockdown, fantastic, restriction. And you'd all be going, what? There's nothing great in that. Hang on. Okay. So I'm just feeling very strongly at the moment to go into a vibration around that, into the joy of lockdown. Well, I can go into my own joy. That's quite easy. I'm writing at the moment, so I'm loving it. I actually haven't changed my life at all since all this happened because I pretty much work alone in any case, and I typically go out to coffee shops when I can. But most of the time, I'm not having the social life that everybody else is having. I'm not going to nightclubs. I had no money for 3 years, 2.5 years. Now I've got some money coming in because I'm studying. But I'm still I've always been a researcher. I'm a person who likes to know. And when I've got a problem that I'm tackling, I usually tackle it. And I will work on it until I get the answer. That's just the way I am. I'm curious. I made a very good research analyst when I was one. So what's great about this? Well, I didn't expect it. So I like surprises. It came up and I just went, right, he's locking down the whole city. Interesting. So from a joy perspective, loving what is, firstly. I'm coming now from an expanded perspective of a universal intelligence. All life, you can look at it this way. Look at nature. If you were to put a plant under a microscope, you would see symmetry in what they call the Fibonacci spiral, which is that. Life is growth. How do I know I need this experience of lockdown? I've got it. How do I know I don't need it? I don't have it. Now, isn't it interesting that the whole world at the same time, first time in history, was shut down together? Now, from my perspective, and there are many who do think in the same light as I do, the global population on a higher level without knowing it have co-created a situation of pause. Why? Because everybody knows we're on a crazy hamster wheel that we can't get off. In fact, people felt restricted. In the bigger picture, they felt restricted. They're stuck with work, paying bills. Same old, same programming on television, nothing new. Even sport hasn't changed. I've really noticed there's a lack of creativity. Generally speaking, there's a lack of creativity. We're not stepping out of these boundaries. We're not thinking. We're all thinking the same now. They call it globalization, but it's kind of like it's just communication systems constantly repeating and you start to copy it. So we do need a shake-up. I think we do. So that pause is a great thing. It's like going on a sabbatical. It's like a retreat. When I went and did the Vipassna for 10 days, this is a meditation, silent, 10 days. You don't make eye contact. So, yes, social isolation, that was social isolation in truth. We sat for many, many hours being still. So I used to sit on a little chair. It was because my back's a little bit sore. And I would sit all day just sitting. You might nod off a bit. There was a great teacher from India who was the inspired master of Vipassna. He was amazing, and certainly some of his lectures towards the end was if heaven was coming through him, most definitely. Peace, he would say. Be peace. Sending peace into the world. All sentient beings are all peace. Loving kindness. Sending loving kindness to everyone. Breathe in peace. Love. Become still. There's nothing to fear but fear itself. You are the peace that passeth all understanding. You are beyond your physical body, most definitely. It can feel like you are separated self from everyone. And if you are alone, know that you're not. Close your eyes and you will feel the connection to something far greater. Now imagine becoming still for 10 days. Plenty of sleep, no verbal contact, no eye contact. They divided the males and the females so there was no distraction. Because it was an inner journey we went. So there may seem like restrictions around that. We can't leave the compound. There is only a certain walking track we can walk around. There are only certain times we can do it. We were highly restricted. We can't do yoga. You can't do stretches. You can't entertain yourself. You can't read. You can't have an iPhone or a laptop. This was a retreat into the silence. People have revelations in the silence. People see visions. You don't need drugs. You can see visions. You will go through your childhood. You will go through every family member. You'll go through every experience you ever had in 10 days, I can assure you. And you'll go, oh my God, my head, I think too much. Think. Yes. And I would say the same for the leaders too. They're not at peace at all. I can see that. It's very evident because of the way they're pushing the hamster wheel. They're the ones who are actually winding up the hamster wheel. You know, infrastructure projects, more projects, 5G, quick, get it out. You know, lockdown, control. Anyway, they're not at peace, is the truth of the matter. But it's not just them personally. It's all business. It's all activity that's out of control. It is most definitely a parallel to the virus, without a doubt. Out of control, unstoppable, no vaccine can fix that other than inner peace. No vaccine will fix the situation with COVID-19, either in my viewpoint, and I'll explain why after I go still for a little bit. It's because the virus is a recombinant, I think you call it. I'm seeing recombination. From my inner feeling, it is lab created. It has been patented, which means it's novel. It's different. Therefore, by being different, they don't have an automatic, although malaria drugs have been suggested, anti-malaria. But what is being stated here is that they need to make a vaccine that stops this coronavirus. But the vaccines themselves are very cleverly put together, and they have certain technologies in the in the vaccine that will stop a virus from entering the cell, is my understanding, because the virus comes and locks on to a receptor, and then the DNA moves into the cell. My understanding is there's technology that blocks that. So I could be wrong, but my sense is that the vaccines are not, if you like, a traditional vaccine, which was an inoculation. In other words, a little bit of that virus was injected into the person in order for the antibodies to create a defense. Because these are novel, this is a novel virus, I mean it's lab created, in my view. It's not possible, and they're saying that it's 80% close to SARS-CoV-2. But it isn't SARS, okay? It's not SARS-CoV-2. It's, in their view... Oh! Did you hear that? Let's go listen to this. That just turned on. That's interesting. New sensation. This song is in excess. See magic happens. That's fascinating. Oh, it's still going. I'll turn it off. That's funny. Far out. I have to confess, that's not the first time it's done that. It has done it before. But you have to laugh. Now, I didn't have it on that song, New Sensation. But I think that's timely, perfect. You know, I said there was no mistakes in the universe. And I do like spontaneity. That's hilarious. So a new sensation, I'm going to play with that because that's just, that's amazing that came on like it did. You saw it shock me. A new sensation. That's what Michael Hutchins is singing. He's the Australian singer. Without a doubt. Okay, it's a new sensation. All right, I want to go with that, with the SARS-CoV-2. No, it's actually around all of this whole drama, if you like. There's a new sensation. Sensational came to me. So this beautiful creation, the lab creation, that could be it there, the lab creation. Apparently, some of the scientists are saying that it's got HIV inserted, and SARS. Severe acute respiratory syndrome is SARS, and human HIV. So the HIV was what created AIDS. SARS is what creates, they're saying, the virus. COVID-19, they're saying, has come from SARS-CoV-2, but it's an 80% possibility. They're not saying SARS-CoV-2 creates COVID-19. What they're saying is the spread of it. They're saying it's the spread of COVID-19, which is the symptoms. It's not a virus. So when they're talking about the spread of COVID-19, they're talking about the spread of the symptoms: sore throat, cough, shortness of breath, headache. They're not saying it's a virus. That you have to be very clear about that. So perhaps this video is a new sensation. I sense probably so. All right, now I was talking about Vipassna and stillness. And it helps you to tap in to deeper truth, deeper peace, which will actually give you guidance on what to do next. So you don't have to worry about this time. Be fascinated. This has never happened in history. This is the first time. Look at it as a sabbatical. Another 6 weeks of sabbatical. Obviously, you need it because there it is. You're going, what about my business? It's going to go down. Let things go. I'll give you another example of where I've let things go. I often talk about in my blogs Byron Katie. Now, I found Byron Katie when I was studying in Bangkok on the Peace and Conflict Studies program. And I kept feeling inspiration around peace, not conflict. Everybody's very good at creating the conflict. We have arms, we have police, we have militarism. We invest a lot in this. But when I was in Bangkok and my focus was on peace, this was a peace and conflict studies program by world experts from the Rotary program. We had the best in the world come and teach us over a period of 3 months. It wasn't spiritual peace. This was more academic. But I was feeling personally drawn to transformative peace. I wasn't looking for quick fixes with it. I was interested in what actually transforms peace. So I started searching for it on the internet. This person came up, Byron Katie, who I'd never heard of before. Now, I looked into her work and I knew she was who I was after. I knew. Now, she was depressed for 10 years. That's a long time. She was very cantankerous. She was not a happy woman. Apparently, she was in a halfway house. She was so low that she slept on the floor. not good enough to even clean her teeth. She was extremely depressed and miserable. She was a very wealthy real estate person, actually. She came from the small town of Needles. Probably was looking for some needles. She was a very pretty lady, actually, but not a happy person. And this came from her childhood with her mother, in actual fact, the unhappiness. So she's lying on the floor one morning, a cockroach runs across her leg, and she wakes up. And she said she woke up. Now, Caitlin was her name, had gone, disappeared. She didn't have any recollection of who she is. She wakes up and she sees the whole room as one. So it wasn't conceptual. That's a window, that's a wall, that's a door, that's a light. It was one whole blend. There was nothing that started and ended. It was all continuous flow. She was in a state of bliss. She goes to the mirror, and it was like something was awake inside her, looking into the mirror and falling in love with her. Now, I want to say to you, in this sort of energy, this is the challenge, is to look into our own mirror and fall in love. For a long time, I couldn't, but there was a point when I did. And I was able to look into my own eyes and love who I am. And it's got nothing to do with aesthetics. It doesn't matter about the imperfections, a little wrinkle here and the grey hair there. Who cares? That's criticalness. Everyone is a miracle. We breathe. We didn't create that. I can look through my eyes and I can see, and I'm in a body, I've got no pain. I'm actually really lucky. And I'm 55. I'm doing well. I feel 30. I really do. I mean, I notice I'm aging a little bit, and I am aging, but I actually am happy about that. I'm getting into that genre of wisdom. Now, Byron Katie said the work was born inside her at that moment of awakening. Now, all it was 5 questions. Whatever the negative thought is, the first question is it true? Yes or no? No story? Because she was without a story. It's the stories that create all the misery. Oh my God, I should be in democracy. Oh my God, I should be free. Oh my God, I should be allowed to travel. Okay. That's the story of freedom. Is it freedom? So if we looked at the lockdown, first question is, let's say we say, this lockdown is making me depressed. Question 1, is it true? Yes, I feel depressed. Can you be absolutely sure that the lockdown is making you depressed? Well, no. How do you feel, how do you react when you believe the thought that the lockdown is making you depressed? Well, I feel resentful for those who are doing it. I feel angry. I feel trapped. I feel powerless because I can't say anything. I'll get fined because they're talking $1,000 fines. That's going to create some stress. People, I feel so sorry for the people that are going, oh my God, I can't move. I'm in a straitjacket. So how do you feel? How do you react? I feel paranoid. I feel this must be bad. This disease must be everywhere. The virus must be everywhere. I'm not safe. I'm not leaving the house. I'm frightened. My life is over. I don't want to live. Okay, so what I want you to do now is look at the world that you're in without the story of a lockdown. What do you see? Well, I go outside my door and I can see the fence, the plants, the chickens. There's some chickens here, very cute. If I keep walking, I can see the bush. I can see the sky. I can't see any lockdown. I'm moving, I'm fine. Okay, let's turn it around. So lockdown's making me depressed. Turn it around to lockdown is not making me depressed. 3 reasons where it's true. Well, I'm choosing my thoughts. They're not making me depressed. They're saying these are things we've all got to be aware of. So what would be the third thing? Lockdown is making me distressed. Lockdown is not making me depressed. I'm making me depressed because I'm believing the lockdown means I'm restricted. Am I? Where aren't I restricted? Well, I can make lunch. I can watch a video. I can kick back. I can work online, whatever it is. So the turnarounds are really about turning around to the opposite, to the self. I am locked down. I am depressed. I am not locked down. I am not depressed. You can play with it. And the idea with the turnarounds is to keep turning them around, just to sort of experience how we stress ourselves because we believe our thoughts, essentially. So it's very important to understand that. And that became a door that opened for me when I was truly intending to learn about peace. So Bangkok, even though I went to a Rotary program and they didn't teach Byron Katie, I could have gone, oh my God, they haven't taught me anything, transformative here. But in actual fact, I had to go there, had to get into the experience of them focusing on counter-terrorism, them focusing on conflict. And it's not to say the things they focused on weren't interesting. They were. Conflict resolution's great. Looking at different personality types and how they respond to conflict is interesting. We also looked at Gandhi's work. A scholar from South Africa who was actually Australian talked about that. We had people who were involved in the negotiations with the IRA come and have a chat. I saw American sort of mediators come along and talk about how to resolve and create, bargaining. So we learned about principled nonviolence. Interest-based bargaining is where I was going with that. Many, many ways of dealing with conflict. A lot of tools are out there. Certainly in the psychology area, CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy is another way. So there's lots of things we can learn. Yoga is fantastic. It releases and opens the chakra system, which is the energy centre in the body. You don't have to go for a run, but you can do some stretches. You can learn that online. You may go online and research the coronavirus. So just go with the flow of where life is taking you when it appears a certain way. And maybe write a diary and just say, this is where I went today. Now, you would never have done that without the lockdown. I would never have researched COVID-19. I would never have looked into the health area. I would never have assessed the vaccines industry. I would never have looked into my own government had I not been confronted, if you like, with a global shutdown, because I found that very interesting and I wanted to know what was behind it. I'm getting clearer. But I know at essence it's the fear of not enough. There's a virus in greed and concentration of power. We need to distribute into a more balanced ecosystem. Viruses typically arise when there's imbalance in the ecosystem. They are part of nature's design. Yes, things get sick and die off, and that's the natural balance reasserting itself. In the world we're in today, people are actually creating biotechnology in labs, and they're actually able to create their own. And they can store dangerous diseases. So there is a public conversation in the future coming around that. So I'm just going to go still for one moment, and then I'm going to finish. A new sensation might come up. Did I turn it off? No, it is on. I'm just laughing. That came up. Humour. Okay, be still. New sensation. There's going to be a new frequency. It's funny, I feel to say I love you. Sending lots and lots of love into the world. You are loved. You are precious. You are lovable. You are unique. You are not trapped. This is a new trajectory we're stepping onto now. It's a new sensation. So become aware of all the sensations in your body. Lovingly notice. Notice all the twinges. The body's changing all the time. It's fascinating. We live in the most amazing body. And we don't even notice. We didn't create ourselves. We were created. We are absolute miracles, each and every one of us. So just close your eyes and feel the inner body. Well-being is your purpose. To be well is to be in balance. Being is to be present with whomever you're with. Don't watch the TV. Stop getting on the computer. Get off that thing. Pull out the earplugs. Notice your neighbour. Say hello. Put a note in their letterbox. Do something creative. Why not put a love message or a happy message or a joke under somebody's windscreen wiper? Do that. When you walk past people, look into their eyes. People are doing more of that now, I notice. I'm thrilled about that. I grew up in a city. I grew up in Canberra, but it was a small place when I grew up. Everyone said hello to everybody. That was my normal. When I came to Melbourne, and even the last time I was there, I was thinking, nobody actually looks at each other. I'm always amazed. It's like, God, I can't be like that. I notice everybody. I think being a clown too, because you can't, when you're dressed up as a clown, you can't ignore anyone, and you wouldn't. And you just give love to everybody. You know, everybody is beautiful. And I saw that, and I mean it without exception. The homeless person's beautiful. When you really see them. See, when the negativity drops away and you start to look at the world through a focus of love, look at our leaders with love. They're in fear, yes, but they're also beautiful and they're also unique in their own way. And even in their role that they're playing, it will create a contrast for others to find themselves. When you look into people's eyes, you can see that beauty. And when I was a clown, it was the most beautiful experience of my life because I saw the truth. I became the presence of love when I clowned around and joked, and nobody was unacceptable to me. And you'll find that when you start to find that inner peace, it won't matter what perceptual restrictions are happening, even if you're in a prison, like my friend's son. You can bring the light in at any time. And for those who feel threatened by those who are human and humanities-based or love-based, we are you. We're calling you home. Because until we unite both aspects, there will be an imbalance. Nobody will ever find their utopia or their peace until we come together and we see ourselves in each other. Always remember that I am you, you are me. Because when you look deeply into someone's eyes, you actually no longer become aware of yourself. If you've ever done that, and I've done it at certain workshops where you just stare deeply into someone's eyes, suddenly you disappear and they become you. Some of the deep ecology work is around that intimacy. Because in truth, we're one. And the planet itself, the ecosystem, is one. There will be no viruses on the planet once everything comes into balance. They only come up just to rebalance. It's a bit like weeds, how weeds grow up when the soils are exposed. The weeds are not bad things. They're actually protecting the soil. They're holding the soil together, and then they die back into the soil and create a nutrient. So weeds are actually like, if you wounded your arm, you've got a scab that grows over. The weeds are the same. The viruses and the bacteria are very important for life on Earth. They're part of the biomass. If we lost and eradicated and sanitized to the point of no bacteria, no virus, we won't live. We actually need them to live. But when they come, and I don't personally believe we're in a pandemic, but people are saying that that's so. When things come in a pandemic form from a natural source, that's happening in order to rebalance the planet. When it's coming from an unnatural source, then it's not rebalancing the planet. It actually creates more imbalance, because the creator of that imbalance hasn't recognized that they are the cause of the very thing that they feel threatened by. And this is where we take ownership and responsibility for our thought, word, and action. If we're not in peace, then we're creating fear. If we're creating fear, we're creating more and more disruption. And eventually, being part of nature, as we all are, wisdom will bring us back to what I call 0 point, which is that stillness. We will come back to who we are at a certain point. Everyone gets there at a different timing, but it's all perfectly on time. So we are in exciting times, is my point. So with that, I want to send you great love. I want to send you great peace. And just know that there are no mistakes in the universe, okay? So have fun. Go and wear a wig. Go and do what I'm doing. Enjoy. I love you. Bye.